Welcome, grade 10s, to your very first lesson of business studies. What an exciting journey for us to be together. So, whenever you start something new, there needs to be some kind of foundation, basic building blocks that you can work on. So, what I'm going to do in this introduction is to explain to you the three different business environments that exist. And we will refer to these from grade 10 to 11 to 12. So it's really important that you know what these three business environments are. So if we have a look, you can see that I've got the name three business environments. But now what are we going to call them? So here we go. The first one is the micro environment. And as you can see, it's the smallest of the circles, all right? So it is the smallest environment, but it's the most important environment because it is who or what the business is. Everything the business does exists in the small micro environment. It's small, so you can control it. You know what's happening. So you're in full control of the micro environment, which is the business itself. The second environment is directly outside the micro environment, and that is called the market environment. And a market is a place where you buy and sell things. So if the first environment is the micro and it's the business, the market is all the people you are interacting with on a daily basis. Right? So it would be your consumers, your suppliers, your competitors. You're constantly interacting with them, but they are outside of the business environment, of the micro environment. So we often refer to the market environment as an external environment. Then we have the macro environment. The macro environment is the largest of the three environments. In fact, it is the environment which the business, the little red microenvironment, has no control over. Things happen in this macro environment, in this large space, that influences and forces a business to change the way it runs itself. So now we're going to break down every single environment. And by the time you get to the end of term one, you're going to know this by the back of your hand. So, what is the microenvironment made up of? It's made up of business policies, and business policies are things like the vision, the mission, the objectives, the goals of the business. Then it also has the organizational resources. So that's the things that the business has. How much money does it have? How much technology or equipment or assets does it own? How many people are employed by the business? We then have something called the organizational culture, which is like the identity of a business. And if you think of all the different schools that you know, each one has a different kind of identity. They have different core values that they uphold. Then we have the organizational structure. That means the hierarchy of the business. Is it a very flat hierarchy, or is it a very tall hierarchy with a CEO at the top with lots and lots of levels of management? What kind of structure is the business confined to? And then lastly are the 8 business functions. And I'm not going to tell you what those functions are now. We'll learn about them later. So remember, the micro environment is the smallest environment. It is the internal environment, and you have full control over all of these things. We then move on to the market environment. Remember, this is the environment that you're constantly engaging with, right? So it's not inside the business, it's outside, hence the external environment. So you only have some control or a little control in convincing the people or the organizations in this environment. So it's made up of your consumers, your customers, your suppliers, your competitors, civil society, industry regulators, trade unions, and strategic alliances. So those all make up or are the components of the market environment. And the last one is the macro environment. Now this is totally out of control. Okay, you cannot control what happens in the macro environment. And the way we remember the components or the parts of the macro environment is we use this acronym called PESTLE. The P stands for political, the E economical, S social, T technological, L for legal, and E for environmental. So an example would be elections that come up. They are a political factor, and you cannot control who is going to win the elections. One just needs to look at the USA elections that have just taken place to see this. So to recap, we have the microenvironment, which is the internal environment, and it is the business itself. Then we have the market environment, which is external, and you have some control over it. And then the macro environment, also an external environment, of which you have no control.